Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Now, as a father, one of the things I often think about is discipline. It could be right before bed when my daughter is saying, "No, I don't want to go to sleep." It could be at the dinner time when my daughter is saying, "No, I don't want to eat." Or it could be out in public. Oh man, in public. Now, today we're discussing a concept called positive discipline. An idea around how might we think about discipline a little bit differently so that way we can get perhaps the best results that we are looking for. Now, in order to have this conversation, we are really blessed to have Sister Noha Alshugairi coming from Irvine, California. Now, many of you may have been familiar with Sister Noha and her work with Sakina counseling. In fact, I was just on the phone the other day with somebody in the Bay Area, and they said, "Oh, Sister Noha is the person to talk to." But if you haven't been familiar with Sister Noha, she is a licensed marriage and family therapist, and she's a certified positive discipline trainer focused on the Muslim community. And in fact, she has been involved with teaching a number of schools as well as parents related to this topic of positive discipline, among a whole host of other topics, including things like marriage counseling. And so with that, I'd like to invite Sister Noha to join us. Assalamu alaikum, Sister Noha.
عليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
So,
جزاك الله خير.
well, it is such a treat to have you. Now, I'm in Minnesota. Alhamdulillah, it's summertime. I'm just curious, what's the weather like out there in Irvine right now?
Today it's warm. So we in my house we do what we call the summer hibernation. So basically around 9 a.m. we start closing all the windows so that we can just have the coolness of the house, stay inside the house. So
Allahu Akbar.
yeah.
In Minnesota, there is no because once the winter is gone,
What?
everyone leaves their home and doesn't come back until it's nighttime. We try to enjoy that weather. Now, I this word positive discipline, and it's one thing I've actually seen it in so many different contexts. I feel like it's gaining popularity. What is positive discipline, Sister Noha?
So maybe let's begin by talking about that the word could mean a general meaning and it could have a specific meaning. So the general meaning that, people usually when they use it, they're talking about it meaning that we are disciplining our children in positive way. And that could include for some people the meaning that we're not going to punish them, we're not going to spank them, we're always going to be nice with them, we're not going to yell, we're not going to scream, and we also are going to do positive reinforcement, which means, we're going to give them rewards whenever they do something well. So that's the kind of like some people generally, this is how they think of positive discipline. However, the positive discipline that, I use in my practice and, I talk to people about is much more specific. It has actually specific ideas and concepts, and it focuses on the building of the inner locus within the child. So it actually focuses on detaching our discipline from the external control that parents sometimes do because they love their children and they think this is what we need to do in order for them to be citizens, practicing Muslims, good people, what have you. So
I I want to double click on that because,
mhm.
mashallah, Sister Noha, that even that concept, right? The internal locus within our child.
Mhm.
Will you explain that once more? So, what do you mean?
Okay, this is a very important concept, honestly. And if we think about it from an Islamic point of view, okay, think about us as Muslims, practicing Muslims. The internal locus for us is about being aware of Allah at any given moment. It's, being aware of Allah and making decisions about how I'm going to behave in this moment because I have a connection with Allah. This is the internal locus, for us Muslims, and for people who who are familiar with the hadith by Umar ibn al-Khattab, when Jibril comes to the Prophet and he asks the Prophet ﷺ and tells him, tell me about what is Islam and what's Iman and what's Ihsan. And then, the Prophet says, Ihsan is that you worship Allah as if you see Him.
MashaAllah.
Because if you don't see Him, He sees you. So that is a beautiful statement explaining what internal locus of control for us Muslims mean. Now, when we sometimes as parents, again, out of our love for our children, we tie our discipline to, oh, don't do this because, people will talk about you. Or don't do this because, I'm not going to love you. Or, do this so, I love you more. This is tying discipline to external locus of control. The intention is, most of the time, all of the time for parents, the intention is very good. The intention is, I want my children to be the best. So this is what I think I need to do. But when we're tying the behavior of the child to these external influences of society, we're not helping the child connect stronger and deeper with Allah.
MashaAllah. I really appreciate that. What I heard you say is this idea of, look, what is our intention? Like even our niyyah, like when we are doing work, what is the rationale for it? And I'll tell you something, Sister Noha. I think about my own experience growing up, relationship with Allah, but also relationship with my mom. Sister Noha, when I was 20 something years old, I studied abroad. And I remember my brother came and visited me. And at one point in time, he questioned me. He said, Amin, like, would your mom be happy with you? And because I have such a relationship with my mom, because I love my mom so much, I thought to myself, Allahu Akbar. And that complete paradigm shift for me, right? As a 20-year-old. In the same way, it sounds like, look, when we can put things in the perspective of, hey, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala happy with you, or putting Allah at the center of it, that makes a lot of sense to me. In theory, it makes a lot of sense to me.
And may I add, I'm going to add something here.
Please.
So seems like, alhamdulillah, you are blessed that you have a mother who is loving and is not demanding of you in a way that suffocates you.
Yeah, well, my mother, who has passed away, so may Allah, inshallah, bless her.
Amin.
Yeah, what I will tell you about my childhood, Sister Noha, is her love for me was unlimited. Like it had no bounds. And did that mean that she would scold me? Yes, she would scold me because she wanted what was best for me. But I knew that her love for me was so unlimited that more than anything as a motivation for me is I wanted to please my mom.
Yeah.
So no, I don't think it suffocated me. No, I don't think so.
And so this is the difference between you and someone else, another family, where parents actually use their love or their sacrifice for their children to control and manipulate the children. Because sometimes they demand of their children in the name of love and sacrifice, of the children kind of losing, in a way, some of their individuality, and I'm not talking about haram things. I'm just talking even like as simple as sometimes, the decision of who to marry, or the decision of what to study in college. So this is when the children sometimes are put in such a tough situation because they do care about their parents. They do. But then they want to do things that their parents are not okay with, even though they're not haram. They're perfectly halal, and it's really a very difficult bind for the children. So I personally believe that if we from the beginning as parents, focus on that, okay, what is halal? Really use Allah's criteria for how, we talk to our children and, what values do we transmit to our children, and always make Allah the center of, is Allah pleased with you? Is Allah happy with you? Is this a decision that on the day of judgment, you're going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and you're not going to, feel concerned or worried or anxious about how are you going to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I to me, it's such an important shift to do nowadays, especially because of the challenges we're going through right now.
I want to double click on some of these areas, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I want to ask about, well, how might we actually build this locus of control? Like, what are tangible ways we can do that? But before we do, I want to just take a moment to say, okay, the form of discipline that you're advocating is one where we are, trying to put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the center of it. There are other forms of discipline that I know of. One of them, for example, is by saying, if you do this, I'll give you a cookie.
Yeah.
Which
Mhm.
I'll be honest, like I do that sometimes. Or also, sometimes I'll say, Kother, if you do this again, then daddy's going to be very unhappy, and then don't make me say it again. But inevitably, like sometimes it doesn't work actually. So I guess I'm curious, like, why is this form, like, what is wrong with the other forms of discipline?
I think the maybe two major concerns that I have, and these two types that you have mentioned, one is the reward, and the other one is the threat. You're basically threatening her. You're saying, if you do this, dad's gonna be unhappy. Some people go to the to more than that, and they're like, you're gonna be grounded. I'm not gonna give you your allowance. I'm gonna take away your cell phone, or what have you. So we have the two ends of the spectrum: rewards and punishments. So these two are external motivators of behavior. Okay, so that so they don't align with what I'm inviting parents to kind of like focus on the internal locus. And I understand it's a very theoretical idea, and then it's people go like, oh, how do we apply this, right? But let's come back to your question. Your question is, what's wrong? Why shouldn't we use the
External.
rewards on, yeah, the
Yeah.
external motivators, right? So two main concerns I have with this. Okay, one of them, they work on the short term rewards and punishment. They do. They can be sometimes very effective, and parents feel very proud of themselves because they actually got the result that they want, and it happened very quickly. um, However, it doesn't mean necessarily that they're going to work with all children. Like, I still remember to this day, because me as a young parent, I used rewards when I was when I was a young mother. And I remember to this day the day my son, my middle son, he was in second grade, and I'm a parent who uses rewards and incentives, and I'm a good parent. So I tell my son, hey, if you don't do this, you're not gonna get this. And he simply, very simply looked me in the eye and he said nonchalantly, I don't care, mom. And when your child tells you, I don't care about your reward, then you have lost all power and control. So I was blessed, me, Noha, was blessed that my son challenged me at an early age, because then I had to shift.
Yeah.
I really had to shift because, okay, this is not working. Imagine if I didn't have to shift until they were in the teen years, I would have lost a lot of ground.
Yeah.
So,
No,
so
it resonates with me actually. Just the other day, I said, my daughter was eating a lot of potatoes, and as a joke, I said, if you eat too many potatoes, you're going to turn into a potato. You don't want that, do you? And she said, no, I do want that actually. And I was like, now what do I say? She wants to be a potato. So
she's smart. She's very intelligent.
mashallah, she gets it from my wife. Mashallah, she gets it from her mom. Now, Sister Noha, so let's talk about this then, for example. And by the way, I guess as you're talking about it, one of the questions, and I just think about this, right? So there's this, I think there's this tradition that is attributed to this woman, Rabi al-Basri. And she talks about worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And she's, basically references that there's three kind of forms of worship. One is like the worshiper of a businessman who's like, worshiping so that way he gets a reward. Then there's the worshiper of someone who is, full of fear because they're worried about hellfire. And then there's a third worshiper who worships Allah because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is deserving of worship, right? And this form perhaps being the best form. But, I do, like, in some ways, I feel like that fear, or as I think about my own relationship with Allah, I do have hope for the paradise,
Inshallah,
and
all
for
of
Allah
us.
subhanahu wa ta'ala's blessings, and I do have fear of the punishment, and at the same time I'm also like appreciating Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for Allah and worshiping Allah for his attributes. I kind of wonder, might there be place for all three of these to like work together, of like some reward, some punishment, some for the sake of Allah? I don't know, I'm just thinking out loud.
Yeah. So are you talking about it in terms of our relationship with Allah, or are you talking about it in terms of our discipline? Because they're two different things.
So I was thinking about it with respect to discipline, but
Mhm.
again, I imagine my thoughts here aren't fully baked. I'm curious because I worry, like, okay, just for all intents and purposes, if my daughter is doing something,
Mhm.
um, like, if I'm like, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala be happy with you,
Mhm.
I worry, like, is she actually gonna,
Mhm.
like, is that gonna work?
Maybe not when she's very young, but having her understand the concept that our life revolves around Allah's being pleased with us is an important message for children to begin getting. Okay. And I wouldn't do it when they're very young. Like, we need to understand also young kids have to go through different stages. Like, a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old, they're gonna do things not because they're bad people. It's just because they are actually, that's part of their um the stage of life they have to go. It's part of, they need to be trained. So for example, let's uh, I'm just gonna just do a random example here. Let's assume, and I'm gonna make it ridiculous here just to make the point. Let's just let's just assume your child spilled milk or juice on the floor. Okay, we're not gonna go and tell him, oh, is Allah happy with you because you spilled milk and juice on the floor? Okay, we're gonna say you and so if we go to the external locus, it would be like yelling and screaming, how could you do this, you need to be careful, something like that. Okay, that would be the external control. The internal control, it would be something, oh, you made a mistake, you need to fix it. Okay, so then, okay, you spilled the juice, you spilled the milk. How can you fix your mistake? This is to a young child. We can begin this with children as young as even 1 year old, because even they're not verbal, but they will pick up on the words and what we're doing and saying and asking as we repeat it over time. So internal locus is, okay, you're responsible, you made a mistake, it's okay, no big deal. And this is also actually an important message in life. It's, we make mistakes, nobody's perfect. That's an important message, because some parents send the message about you need to be perfect.
Mm.
You can, and mistakes are not accepted in the household, and then we end up with children growing up with a lot of psychological struggles. Either they go the extreme of, I'm always going to be perfect, and when I'm not perfect I'm depressed, or they're going to go the way of like, I cannot do it, I cannot be perfect, and then they might end up being addicted because they have given up on their ability to do things. So it's just so intertwined.
I appreciate that, and with respect to that fear thing, I think a lot of it actually has to do with risk too. It's interesting because in entrepreneurship, the reality is that you're really not going to be successful unless you take a risk, and a
Yeah.
good risk is one where you might actually fail.
Yeah.
And so if you don't have that tolerance, then it actually inhibits you from becoming the best version of yourself. Now, having said that, so let's focus on this then. Okay, so um my so um what I'm submitting to you, and what I think I've heard you say is like, look, let's put Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the center of our discipline. And let's have our discipline revolve not around necessarily what makes me as a parent happy or sad, or like, an extrinsic motivation, but instead focus on building that relationship between our children and Allah, and thinking about, well, what is going to please our creator and what is not going to please our creator. Now, having said that, theoretically, I'm completely with you. So what are some of the ways that we can actually install this?
Yeah.
Like how do we actually, because I imagine it's a little bit of a process or a marathon, and it probably means that like we have to be thinking about Allah at a very early age too.
Okay. So maybe I need to clarify something. Okay,
Please.
here. Okay. So the idea of shifting to the discipline revolving around Allah is kind of like the framework. Okay. But that's not necessarily what we're doing in every interaction with our children. Okay. That wouldn't be realistic. It would be actually overwhelming, you know? But I just want to change the frame first, because the frame is kind of like what defines what the parents are going to do. So I want to change that. The a lot of parents, their frame is, I'm going to use rewards and punishment to get the discipline in place, and I'm going to tie it to me being pleased or not pleased and so on. So I just want to change that, and then inside the frame we have so many things we're going to do with our children, and our goal with that is to actually get them to be responsible, accountable, independent, honest. All of these characteristics that if you see in a person, this person has a high potential of being a contributing citizen of the world. And the way we do this is by using the everyday interactions between us and our children as training grounds. So we use them as opportunities to teach all of these lovely, characteristics. So, for example, I already shared the example about the child spilling milk or juice or so on. And then instead of yelling and screaming and being upset because now I have more work to do, okay, and he's clumsy, so I'm labeling my child now. I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to teach my child. He made a mistake. He needs to be responsible. I'm going to teach him how to mop up the mistake. Now take that part, that example, and apply it to so many things in life. So the child, for example, could fail in a science test. Okay. He comes home, he has an F on the science test. So we could yell and scream, and how could you, and how dare you, and I told you don't be on your phone all the time, and you're wasting your time, and you're staying up, and you're not listening to me. We can do this, which is very ineffective. Or we could sit next to the child and say, I want to see your science test. Explain to me, how is it that you failed? I want to understand how you failed. So what we're doing by doing that is we're teaching critical thinking skills. Okay, we're teaching the child to really analyze what he or she is doing, and make the connection between cause and effect, cause and results, because sometimes parents say too much and they don't allow the children space to think and reflect. So sometimes they don't get this idea about there is a direct relationship between what I'm doing and the results I'm getting. Even though it seems like a simple concept, there are many children who don't get it because we're not providing that space for the children to get it. And so if we go back also to the example of failing the science test, part of the parents' responsibility also is to ask themselves, do I have enough boundaries around electronic use in the household? Am I really doing what I need to do? Really, honestly, I'm going to use this platform to talk about parents. They need to be firm. They really need to be firm. And that does not mean they're being mean, especially around electronics, because they're very addictive. And children don't understand. They can tell you, oh, yes, I know how to use my phone and it's not gonna take all my time. But I really inviting all parents to really say, ask yourself, what are my boundaries around electronic time? I just found out recently that Apple actually grants parents a lot of control over the iPhone. I was like, wow, finally it happened.
Uh-oh. I hope it doesn't provide wives boundaries around their husband's iPhone too, because I think my wife will control how much screen time I get. No, I'm
Okay,
kidding.
I
Um,
understand. That
uh,
that's yeah, that's another domain. But I want parents to have control over electronic time and use with their children. And that doesn't mean you're not cool or you're a mean parent. That means you're actually doing a responsibility.
I guess so. So, Sister Noha, I appreciate this. So positive parenting and um uh and this idea of the locus of control is the framework. That means that a parent can still also be firm.
Oh
S-
yeah.
So
Yes,
so
indeed.
so build on that with me. So like what does it mean to be firm, and how does, like, say for example, so let's do like a role play, right?
Hmm.
Of okay, say for example, I am a parent of a 9-year-old,
Hmm.
and say for example, the 9-year-old is saying it is bedtime. They say, no, I don't want to go to bed because I want to watch, one last episode of, this thing. There's clear boundaries that like 9 o'clock is bedtime. And the conversation now ensues that the child is, like adamant that they want to watch. What does how does a firm positive parenting, like what does that actually look like?
Yeah. So, okay, this is a very important question. And now this one relates back to what is the style at home anyway? Okay.
What is the what at home?
What's the style of parenting
Style.
that's
Okay, very good.
happening? Okay. Because if if the parent from early on in doing the kind and firm at the same time, okay, then it's gonna be a very simple solution when this 9-year-old say, I just want to watch, one more episode of whatever. Then the parent would say simply something like, our rule. What's our rule? So so the parent will ask the child a question. What's our rule?
Our rule is to go to sleep at 9 o'clock.
Okay, so that's what we're gonna do.
But I don't want to. Come
That's
on,
fine, and
please.
I'm not gonna argue with you.
So then you'll let me watch?
I'm not gonna allow you to watch. You're not allowed to watch, and I'm not gonna argue with you over whether you can watch or not. You can watch tomorrow when it's your time to watch.
So Sister Noha, I appreciate that. So that firmness I think was really good, because like you didn't break. You weren't like, maybe like let me talk to my spouse, because that's sometimes what I'll do. I'll be like, I don't know, let me talk to your mom and get back to you. like I have to go talk to the boss. I'm like, hold on, just stay. I gotta talk to the boss. I'll come back. But
So
there's a part of it that like I don't know if my child realizes this or not, but like if they say no, like what do I do?
you
Like
just
I almost
hold your
feel
ground.
powerless.
The powerless is coming from you, okay? Because it's under your control, really. This particular point is under your control. You can turn off the TV, you can turn off the iPad, you can turn off all the internet at home. You have a lot of power as a parent, and that's why I tell parents, please use your control over electronics effectively. They tell me, oh, but they whine and they cry. I say, let them whine and cry. It's okay for your child to be upset with you over your rule. And this is part of the firmness, because this is one of the main reasons why parents are not firm. They see their child upset and angry and screaming or having a tantrum, and their heart breaks, and then they decide to cave in. But they don't understand that the message that the child is getting is I can get my way.
And
I
yeah.
only have to cry and whine and argue back, and I'm gonna get my way.
So I want to clarify a couple of things. And by the way, I have literally been there, and I'm sure every parent has been there. And even the thought crosses my mind. I'm like, if I give in now, there's a girl of mine is going to learn that if I just cry and like whine, then I'm gonna get it. And so then I'm like, well, I have to remain firm. But then at the same time, Sister Noha, I think to myself, I'm like, mashallah, like my daughter, like she's amazing. I love her, she's strong-willed. So if I say something, she's like, nope. Nope. Like she'll and it's almost like, and I especially know, Sister Noha, like the problems become when it's time for sleep, right? So I know that she is tired. I know that she's not necessarily acting in her senses. I know that she doesn't even want to like necessarily take the position against me, but because she's mashallah has this like stubborn attitude like her mom. No, I'm kidding, not like her mom, not like her mom, like me. Like she just like she feels like she's in a corner or something, so she has to like say no. And then I'm like, well, in order for this to resolve nicely, it's almost like I feel like a cold war. Like if someone doesn't blink, then the other person just not going to stop. So I just kind of what I do is I say, okay, John, like, okay, my daughter, I'm gonna take a step away, and then I'm gonna come back, and I try to like de-escalate the situation a little bit. But if I were to, I feel like, remain firm the whole time, I just wonder, like, I don't know. But at the same time, I agree with you. I completely agree with you that if you don't have that level of firmness, it can actually like create a lot of bad attitudes. And even that stubbornness is probably not a healthy or a good tendency.
Uh-huh. And you're touching upon so many layers in parenting. Okay. So let me ask you, first of all, how old is your daughter?
So my daughter's only 4 years old. She's three and a half.
Okay. Okay. So this is actually your golden opportunity to begin actually maybe tweaking some of your discipline strategies to really invoke this kindness and firmness at the same time. Okay. Because it seems like your household has a lot of kindness.
Yeah, I mean, mashallah, uh, I bring the kindness, mashallah. My wife brings the anger. Oh, sorry, did you say anger? No, firm. No, I'm totally kidding. My wife, I love my wife so much. No, both of us actually. My wife models it for me, and she, mashallah, is much more patient than I am. So we do have, I think, a lot of kindness. And I feel like there's almost like a pendulum, right? And I feel like, and I don't know if it's other people within our generation too, but I feel like kindness is not a problem. I feel like we do a
Yes.
good job with kindness.
Yes. Yes, you do. Yes. You have a big problem with firmness.
So now what do I do about it?
Yeah. So there are many things, but I'm gonna say it very loud and clear. The earlier the parents start doing the kindness and firmness at the same time, the better it's gonna be for everybody in the family, including the parents. Because I can tell you, in a household that has a lot of kindness, there is a lot of meltdowns, there is a lot of tantrums, there is a lot of butting heads because the children have picked up that they can be actually they can rule. Like
Yeah.
your daughter is telling you no now, and it's over simple things, but can you just fast forward 10 years to the teen years, and the no's are going to be on bigger issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so true. Yep.
So let's come back and focus on how do we manage, how do we get this kindness and firmness at the same time. So number one is you need to give her opportunities to say no in areas that are not big issues. For example, food. So many parents, they have battles over food, and it's so unnecessary. Just focus on providing healthy food in your home. She doesn't want to eat something, no big deal. She says no, you tell her, okay, no big deal. You don't have to eat this. She has other alternatives. Okay, so that's the number one. Offering opportunities to say no in things that are not dangerous, not threatening, not very critical. Number two, having a routine. It is extremely important to have a routine. Like you were talking earlier, I mean, about the bedtime battles. You say, I don't know how the bedtime routine goes in your household, but it seems like it's not a bedtime routine that she is collaborating in. So a routine, a bedtime routine would be something like this. And she's 4.5, so she actually she's visual. So the routine can be some kind of poster board with pictures of what she needs to do before she goes to bed. And it goes in the same order every single night. That's what it means to have a routine. So it doesn't work if one night we're gonna do it, second night we're not gonna do it, third night we go back and do it. It has to be done the same way every single night for it to be a routine. And then that by itself helps eliminate a lot of the power struggle with young children. The consistency with the routine, that it's happening in the same way. And so that's another one. Another one for parents who are already struggling with a lot of kindness in their home, and they're doing the butting of heads, you know, with their children. I invite them to track down all the points where they actually are fighting with their children, where there is a lot of tension going on. So write them down on a piece of paper, track them, and then look at where is your control. How can you exert your control in this particular area? Okay. And then figure out how you're going to do that. I'll give you a very also simple example. This is from my own grandchildren. Um, Also, in your generation, there are some of you who are very, very strong about, you know, kind of like not having any screen time at all for
Mm-hmm.
the children. And that was the case with my grandchildren. And so, but sometimes, you know, my grandchildren would get some screen time because the parents are busy. So they like, you know, either give them the iPad or the iPhone just because the parents are busy. They want them to be entertained so they can do whatever they needed to do. But it wasn't predictable. So what ended up happening is the grandchildren knew there is something called screen time, and it's actually very fun, and they actually love it. So then what ended up happening is every morning or every day there was demands to actually have the screen time. Okay. And then I simply sat down with my children and I said, hey, okay, your kids have been exposed already to screen time. So in order for you to gain control over the situation, you actually, what you do is you define when they're gonna watch. You make it a specific time of the day and a specific amount of time, and then khalas, it's gonna eliminate all the problems about when, you know, watching screen time. Because when they come and tell you, oh mommy, I'm bored, I want to watch whatever, then you simply say, hey, you remember screen time is at 5 p.m. at night. You still have 3 more hours, and and then it's gonna be screen time. So this is what I mean by parents looking at where they have control and really exerting that control wisely and effectively.
Wow, mashallah, I really appreciate this. You know, it's interesting because a lot of what you're talking about is so it makes so much sense, and it's almost like if you take a proactive approach, if you're proactive, then you're able
Mhm,
to kind of deal with the problems later, right? Like the best way is not to be reactive to that specific moment. It's to create the structure, the policies, the processes such that you're never there. Much like an organization in some ways, right? Like instead
yes.
of fighting fires, it's like, no, like let's actually develop like the processes, the procedures, the culture. And so, you know, number one, giving her the opportunity to say no, because that's fair. Like, you know, let's allow her to build her confidence or
Mhm,
whatever in that way. Having really strong routines and maybe even visual displays that help reinforce those routines consistently on a daily basis. And then also being thoughtful about, well, where are the areas of friction? And if you become cognizant of those areas of friction, then thinking about where might you be able to exert some control. Um, I think that this is really fair. And also I, you know, the other thing I take away is at the end of the day, standing your ground. And so being
Yeah.
able to, you know, be able to understand that. And I think also is such a well put thing to say, look, if you're enabling that behavior today, it might actually, you're not doing anyone a favor.
No.
You know, allowing that, you know, it's interesting because, okay, as an adult, sometimes, you know, there might be a family member and everyone says, well, that's just the way he is. You know, that's just the way he is, you know, you're stubborn. That's just the way he is or the way she is or something like that. Right.
Mhm.
It's almost as if, you know, if someone at a younger age would have provided the opportunity to like give the feedback or correct that behavior at a younger age, and it wouldn't have manifested in such a kind of strong way. And at that point, it becomes much more difficult to correct. Um,
100%. 100%. Yes. Yeah.
I want to ask the other question now. Like you mentioned, like, so perhaps kindness isn't an issue that I struggle with, but I imagine for some families or some, you know, spouses, like maybe that is a struggle. I wonder if you can, you know, share some tips and tricks or thoughts around how might we develop our kindness, or how do you do them both at the same time? Like, what does it mean to be both kind and firm?
So the example when I role played with you with the 9-year-old about wanting to watch another video. Okay, so that was kindness and firmness at the same time. And so the kindness piece is that I didn't yell, I didn't scream, I did not belittle. I was very respectful. That's the kindness piece. The firmness is I stood my ground. And so many people think, I want to emphasize this, that kindness is about that the child has to be convinced, that the child is not feeling upset or angry, or the child is getting everything he wants because it's, he's a child. That's not kindness. This actually is very ruinous to children's character, honestly. This overdose of kindness without firmness ends up creating children who become adults who believe that they are special, and they think that all people around them have to treat them in such a special way, and they become fragile adults. And that's actually a whole chapter in the book that Munira and I wrote about positive discipline in the Muslim home. It's like, this fragile adult syndrome is happening because of we parents pampering our children and loving them too much and not actually putting enough firmness in place.
What is fragile adult syndrome? Like what
For
it
me,
like, yeah.
fragile adult syndrome is basically adults who are always whining and complaining, and they're not exerting enough effort, and they're expecting that people around them will cater to them. They're expecting their bosses to really cater to their emotions. They're it all it manifests in so many different ways. It's really heartbreaking to see, because that's what they took out from their childhood.
That like the world will that is fascinating. And I feel like that is a chapter that inshallah perhaps in the future we might be able to explore. But I think that's I think that the key takeaway here is, and I mean I really hear you, Sister Noha, that look, you know, when we think about kindness, how do we define kindness? Kindness means that we act with respect. That means that we are, you know, treating people dignified. We are not using bad words. We are not yelling or screaming. We are not belittling them to say,
Nope.
oh, well, what are you going to do about it? Um, uh, that is when we're saying kindness, that is the type of kindness that we're defining it as. What is kindness not? Kindness is not, you know, by any means necessary, the child cannot cry.
Yeah,
Or by
absolutely.
any means necessary, must I convince the child?
Mhm.
Or by any means necessary, must I make sure that the child is um, you know, in that type of way. Now, I do want to ask, and I guess I don't know, maybe it's because I maybe have this bleeding heart or something, but you know, uh, so here's what'll happen sometimes with Gotha and I, and also with the parents. So there might be a situation when I am very firm with Kauthar, my daughter. And then my wife will not undermine me. She will like be on the same page, but
Very nice.
she'll grab Gothar's arm and she'll say, Gothar, why don't you come with me? And then they talk about it as a third, and we'll be on the same page. She'll kind of help Gothar understand. And then afterwards, Gothar will come back and then we will hug and then we will like say, alhamdulillah, everything is good. Don't worry, daddy loves you, so on and so forth. So it's like we build that resolution. But I almost feel like if we don't have that resolution, Sister Noha, like even in my heart, I feel really like, man, I don't want her to go to bed. I don't know. Like before I got married, my dad gave me this advice. He said, you and your spouse should never go to bed like angry, or like you should never
Mm,
go to bed like,
mm.
with like unresolved feelings. And so in the same way, I kind of have this feeling of like, I don't want Gother to go to bed like with an unresolved feeling. um I don't know, maybe that's just
Mm.
hogwash, or I wonder how do you feel about that? Like, must there be like a positive resolution after a argument?
So I'm just maybe trying to understand what would be the definition of a positive resolution.
Well, so specifically what I think about is the other day, it was time to go to bed. Kother said no. I said, no, you have to go. And she's like, no, I don't want to go. And I was like, you better not, you have to go to bed. Daddy's gonna be so sad, so angry. And she didn't. And then I said, well, now daddy is so sad. And so then my wife grabbed her and like talked to her and said, look, it's time to go to bed, so on and so forth. And of course she was crying. She thought I was sad too. Like she genuinely thought I was sad. um
Who thought that you were sad? Your
Kother,
Kauthar
my
did.
daughter,
Okay.
my
Yeah.
daughter thought I was
Yeah.
genuinely sad. And
Yeah.
so then she came to me and she like, she said
Mm.
sorry, and I hugged her. And if she didn't, then I probably would have, before she went to bed, like go there to like resolve the situation.
Mm.
And I feel like that's healthy, but I also feel like maybe I'm overly concerned. Like I'm just too worried about. I don't know. I feel like I do have a genuine concern around her feelings.
Yeah. So I worry about the use of feelings to modulate and manipulate behavior.
Tell me more.
Like, okay, Kauthar is still young, right? I just worry about her that taking the message that, I'm taking it to the future, right?
Hmm.
That people should not be angry and upset with me. Okay, and I'm not. Now I know some people come back at me, but they should not allow their parents to be angry and upset. No, I just want you to look at the big picture now. If the message she gets from her childhood is, I shouldn't allow people to be angry and upset with me, what it means is she is going to be bending for the people around her. And I'm not talking about the parents now. I'm just talking even about friends. I'm talking about, people at work. And that could mean that she loses herself in the process. She
Mm.
loses what she wants and how she's feeling just because she needs to cater to the feelings of the people around her. Do you understand what
I
I'm trying
understand
to
what you're
say?
saying. I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying.
So that's why I hesitate, okay, about using it like, if you don't do this, then I am going to be angry and upset. To me, this is a threat.
Hmm.
And I don't, I really, really invite parents not to use this with their children. Okay, you have a right to be angry and upset, but don't use it as a threat. Okay, use it as a fact when it happens. So for example, okay, um, let's again say, okay, Kauthar in middle school, she fails the science test or the English test or whatever. You say, I'm really, really sad and disappointed because you failed. Okay, that's fair. Okay, she needs to know the impact of her actions on people. That is okay. This is not a threat. And this is not manipulation. This is okay, it happened, something happened. I'm just expressing to my child how I'm feeling about what happened. That is different than saying, if you do this, I will be sad and angry. I
Hmm.
hope I'm making the point and
No,
clarifying the
I
distinction.
understand. I really do. I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that it is nuanced, but it makes a lot of sense because And I think that there's more to discuss as well with respect to, one of the things I sort of think about, and there might be an age thing at some point, because my daughter is, mashallah, so young that she may not really understand Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for me, I almost use myself as a proxy for God, kind of. It's kind of like,
Mhm.
hey, don't you want to please Allah? Like, don't you want to please your parents? So kind of in the same way, or at least this is the way I kind of think about it. But having said that, I can completely see how that would become problematic, and in the future, how that could really like weaken her, because
Yep.
people could take advantage
Yep.
of, oh well, this is, if you do this and this is how I'm going to feel, and I think about it in the future, inshallah, someday when she gets married and things like
Mhm.
that, like the implications of that. Well, Sister Noha, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. There's so many amazing
Yeah.
areas where I would love to chat further, but could you believe it's been an hour? And I know that our families have gained a lot from this. Now, Sister Noha, can you talk a little bit about Sakina counseling and also some of the books that you've written and resources that parents might have available through you?
So Sakina Counseling is the name of my therapy practice. I have a website called Sakina Counseling, Sakina counseling.com. And the book Munira and I wrote is called The Positive Parenting in the Muslim Home. It's basically aligning the concepts and ideas and tools of this specific positive discipline philosophy with Islam in the Muslim home. Yes, and I have a YouTube channel too with different videos about parenting and different things. Also, the YouTube channel is called Sakina Counseling as well.
Wonderful. Sister Noha, I really appreciate you so much. I feel like I have gained so much out of this experience. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. And for all of the parents that have joined us for today's program, I do encourage you to check out Sister Noha's book. I'm looking at it right now on Amazon. Inshallah, I will get a copy. In fact, I imagine my wife already has a copy, but we'll check to see and get this. And it looks like there's also a course on your website as well that looks
Yes.
really amazing.
Yep.
That's an Islamic parenting course. And so, Sister Noha, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you.
Thank you.
And I personally have been so blessed to spend this time with you.
Jazakallah khair. I appreciate that it was so non-scripted and so organic. This is the type of conversations I love to have. So I appreciate you so much for how you facilitated the discussion. May Allah bless you and your
Alhamdulillah.
family.
Inshallah, inshallah. So for those that are watching, inshallah, please join us next week as we attempt to boost our Muslim super parent powers